from the inside out. Better than your morning would feel without. Welcome back to another True Love Tuesday here on Padawan as we are stretching our self-awareness like a muscle every weekday morning. Good morning, it is True Love Tuesdays, 5:34 a.m. everyone. On Tuesday, November 9th, 2021. How art thou? Are you ready to use some body magic tricks to feel so good from the inside out? Not really doing much, just moving our self-awareness around and being so rewarded for it. For example, welcome to this simulation of ours where we invite you to hold your breathing controller properly by pretending that there is a candle in front of your lips that you're trying to not put out. Just a flickering candle in front of your lips that you're trying to not put out. And you're not thinking about inhaling and you're not thinking about exhaling necessarily, simply that there is a candle in front of your lips that you're trying to not put out. And how does that feel for you today? How does this feel for you today? How are you today? It is 5:35 a.m. on this Tuesday. It is Tuesday, November 9, 2021 already. Can you believe it? We're already here. It's so crazy. How art thou? My name is Herbie, everyone. Good morning. This is another episode of Padawan. Today we will be talking about clear and direct on True Love Tuesday. Being clear and direct. Is it very hard to be clear and direct? Or perhaps there are always just distractions. Perhaps we already know what we want to do clearly and directly somewhere whence in that body. We simply must know how to get out of our own way. How do we get out of our own way reliably? Well, with some reliable awareness. What do you mean reliable awareness, Herbie? Well, how often are you always thinking about a candle flickering in front of your lips that you're trying to not put out? And if this affects your body and posture, what might it be like if everybody was doing this? What if we pretended, we challenge you here on Padawan to pretend with us that there's a candle just flickering in front of every person's lips that they're trying to not put out. Yours included. Your neighbor included. The people in your rooms included. Your roommates included. Your family included. Your friends included. While you're underwater included. Anytime you are alive included. There's a candle in front of every person's lips that they are trying to not put out. And as it affects their posture, might that be a reliable way to affect our body in order to feel balanced? A reliable pathway to feeling balanced that we can communicate to one another. That's what we're all about here on Padawan. We'll be right back after this short break to talk about being clear and freaking direct as we talk about the relationship between the two sexes on True Love Tuesday here on Padawan. We'll be right back, but only if you remember that there's a candle flickering in front of your lips that you're trying to not put out. And you're not thinking about exhaling or inhaling, it's just flickering. We'll be right back. Allow it to flicker. Are we remembering that we should always allow the weight of our body to feel distributed across the front of our shins and never across the back of our fleshy calves, which actually might feel more on top or in front of your shins should you be balanced properly, allowing your weight-bearing portions of your body to be bearing the weight of your body. Are we remembering that we are movers and that the tips of our tongues always want to be anchored to the back of the bottom front teeth of ours? No matter what we are speaking, no matter what we are breathing, no matter what we're eating, no matter where we are speaking, no matter whom we are speaking to, no matter what we are looking at, no matter where we are sleeping, the tips of our tongues want to be anchored to the back of the bottom front teeth while always allowing that candle to flicker in front of the lips as we are not trying to not put it out. And how does that feel for you? Let's pull these muscles forward as thus so. Let's feel how forward of the body that feels. Let's orient that body back to the front as it should be. As we know, the weight-bearing portions of the spine are the front. Let's remember to allow the body to beat clearly and directly towards the front as it wants to breathe well, by remembering that the tip of the tongue wants to be anchored to the back of the bottom front teeth as we allow that candle to flicker in front of our lips always, and in front of everyone's lips always, as we're all alike. And how does that feel for you? How does that feel for us today as we are allowing all of those candles to flicker in front of everyone's lips and remembering that the tip of the tongue is oriented towards anchoring to the back of the bottom front teeth, and we notice how far forward of the body that feels? Might we get out of our own way today that way? How art thou? Are you being pulled along this journey along with us today? How are you? Is the sun shining where you are? Are there people around you? Are you working at a location that starts with a star or is oriented with a star? How are you? Are you just waking up or are you still under the sheets? Sometimes you don't mind really lying under the sheets listening to Pal go on, right? Kind of a nice relaxing podcast to lay down to, just relax to. That's why it's nice to be starting so early in the morning, right? So you have time to just you have time to generate energy for yourself. You have time to feel like the day isn't snatched away from you. It's nice waking up early because you get to feel that the day is yours. Before anybody tells you what to do, you have time to strictly decide exactly what you want to do. There's no limitation other than how early you can get up. You can feel as though that you can make the day your beep. We have time to remember that the tips of our tongues wants to be anchored to the back of the bottom front teeth. Might we have forgotten that? And so all the actions in our days feel more like they're more in our control and not at the whims of our bodies as they struggle to be awake for the next whatever hours they are in demand before they are ready to be. Might we get ourselves ready today with whomever you are with, whether you are with your friends or your family or even a teacher today. Maybe you are studying or they're at an after-school study or an before-school study, or maybe you're just cramming, Whatever you are doing, I hope you are remembering that there's a candle in front of your lips that you're trying to not put out. As we're stretching our self-awareness today. What are all these experiences but being funneled through your body? These lights, these sounds, these tastes, these smells, these senses, these touches. What are they all but not being funneled through your body? So why not have a clear and direct body before we talk about being clear and direct in our communication with others? Why might listening be the most important should we be trying to communicate? Might listening be the most important thing when we are trying to communicate? Why? Or should you be trying to say anything to anybody, you would have to know what state they are in so you can understand what kind of messages their body will actually receive at that time. Their arm is cut off, they're not going to be talking about your boogers. If they are emotionally traumatized, they aren't going to be free willing to talk about your serial decision making. And so listening becomes so important if we're trying to communicate any messages that people will even receive, even if we are being clear and direct, what exactly are we trying to say to whom? Why might we get clear and direct in our own body by pretending that there's a candle in front of the lips and allowing the muscles that must engage to allow ourselves to breathe properly have a clear and direct sensation to them by pretending that there's a candle in front of the lips in which you are trying to not put out. Kind of like a birthday candle. You're just trying to not put it out. As you remember that the tips of the tongue wants to be anchored to the back of the bottom front teeth. And we're not thinking about exhaling or inhaling necessarily. Simply allowing the weight of the body to be distributed to where it wants to go. Not even judging if their body is having difficulty doing so or not. Simply allowing ourselves to observe our sense of self today. We'll be right back. Thank you so much for being here and being clear and direct with your own body with us. We'll be right back after this short break to talk about being clear and direct with our loved ones here on True Love Tuesday. But only if you remember that there's a candle in front of your lips that you're trying to not put out. Are we remembering to feel the front of our shins today? Are we remembering that there's a candle in front of our lips that we're trying to not put out, each and every one of us, and it is okay to pretend that with everyone. It is okay to imagine that with me. Are we all imagining ourselves standing up? Isn't that how we stand up? Is we imagine ourselves standing up and our body does so. So I don't mind if we imagine the same things since we are already doing the same things anyway. How do you grab a cup from me when I hand you a cup? Don't you imagine yourself grabbing that cup? And then your body does it. Are we all just imagining our body's movements together? Don't we already imagine the way our body's moving? That's how we function. That's how we coordinate ourselves. I don't mind if you imagine with me that there's a candle in front of your lips that you're trying to not put out. I don't mind if your body coordinates the same way that mine does. Don't we all grab cups from one another? Don't we all dance? Don't we all step similarly? Don't we all rock our heads when we get confused? Don't we all nod up and down when we agree? Don't we all shake our heads when we disagree? I don't mind if we're imagining the same movements. You might imagine a movement of muscle activity going from your chin all the way up to the top of your head when you imagine that there's a candle in front of your lips that you're trying to not put out. I don't mind if you use the same muscles with me. I don't mind if you coordinate with me. I don't mind if you sync up with me. I don't mind if you dance with me. I don't mind if you dance with me. Let's do this dance and pretend that there's a candle in front of our lips that you are trying to not put out. Hey you, I know you're speaking to your friends over there. Continue having a great time. Remember that there's a candle in front of both of your lips that you're trying to not put out. Remember that the tips of your tongue wants to be anchored to the back of the bottom front teeth. Why? In order to be clear and direct. Why do we want to be clear and direct? Well, don't we all want to have the least confusing life, as confusion tends to be the opposite or the killer of freedom and happiness. Uncertainty and confusion will kill freedom and happiness. Even pain, oftentimes, especially in love, can be better than confusion. For you are a human, a wonderful, amazing human, this window to this godlike experience that you are. That can overcome, that will be fine, that will handle it. Especially if you remember that there's a candle in front of your lips that you're trying to not put out. And then remembering that the tips of the tongue wants to be anchored to the back of the bottom front teeth. You are this amazing creature. You are this amazing window to this godlike experience, and you can handle it. Which is why even pain from being clear and direct, should we have faith in being able to survive and see what happens next, is even better than confusion. Being clear and direct even when it hurts, better than confusion. Why would it ever feel like it's not? Well, when you feel like you can't overcome, when it feels like life or death, when it feels like you will literally die. To be clear and direct. There are times in our lives where being clear and direct feels like we might physically die. Speaking to certain people that we care about, speaking to certain people whom we might be afraid of. We might be afraid of the consequences of being clear and direct. We feel like we cannot handle being clear and direct. Are we ever really afraid of being clear and direct, or are we afraid that we cannot handle what happens when we are clear and direct? Is being clear and direct the hard part, or is it the feeling that we cannot overcome what happens when we are clear and direct? But what if we felt indomitable from the inside? What if we felt like nothing could ever stop us? What if we felt like we could handle everything, especially with a candle in front of things like our mouths that we're trying to not put out? Might it be important to be clear and direct, as confusion kills happiness, uncertainty kills happiness like no other, kills freedom like no other, and isn't being dodgy and isn't being sidetracky and anticipative and manipulative, is that not being clear and direct? And so doesn't that add to confusion on both ends? The communicators, both the receivers and both of the speakers, doesn't confusion get created when we are being less clear and less direct? And doesn't confusion on both parties restrict freedom on both parties? Because we are all loving creatures, and we are trying to anticipate and be loving for one another. We are all loving and considerate. We all have a desire to be loving and considerate, and to be treated with love and consideration. And so doesn't adding confusion make it more difficult for us to be more loving and more considerate, as we are sometimes overly loving and overly considerate to the point where we stretch ourselves so thin? And so if we are handling 3 or 4 or 5 or 10 or 30 or 80 or 100 million possible mindsets that these other people are in, while being less clear and less direct, does that make it more difficult to be caring and considerate when we are trying to consider 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 30, 80, 100 million different circumstances these other people might be in, instead of the circumstance they are in, which could be found out with both parties being clear and direct? Then can't we be more loving and considerate? Spreading ourselves thin with 100 million possible ways to be considerate, or getting to the truth with being clear and direct so that we can see exactly how to be loving and considerate? Being clear and direct may be difficult, may be hard. especially if we are afraid that we cannot handle what comes after. But oftentimes it is the best pathway, the most loving pathway, as it might be the quickest pathway. Sometimes speed matters, especially when hurt takes years to recover from. Sometimes speed matters because life is finite. So getting to love faster sometimes is the more loving thing, right? As time matters, we have less of it as it goes by. There comes a time where speed matters, timing matters. And so being clear and direct, there comes a time where that is more loving. As it gets us closer and quicker to being able to be more loving and more considerate to one another. Speed matters, so being clear and direct matters. As sometimes we are overly considerate because we are so loving. Sometimes we can stretch ourselves thin and stop ourselves from being as loving and considerate as we can be, as we are trying to consider and love far too many possible circumstances because we are afraid to be clear and direct, and we are accepting being vague and dodgy. Let's be clear and direct so we can be more loving and considerate here on True Love Tuesday. My name is Herbie. Good morning, everyone. This concludes the first half of today's True Love Tuesday here on Pagawan. We'll be right back after this break at 6 o'clock. It is 5:56 a.m. on Tuesday, November 9th, 2021. My name's Herbie. We'll be right back after this short break here on Pagawan. Only if you remember that the tips of your tongue wants to be anchored to the back of the bottom front teeth, you lovely creature, you. Are we remembering that there's a candle in front of every person's lips that they're trying to not put out today? Feeling so good from the inside out, better than your morning would feel without. Are you ready to stretch your self-awareness like a muscle today and be so rewarded for it? We invite you to hold your breathing controller properly today with us by pretending that there's a candle in front of your lips that you're trying to not put out. It's just flickering in front of your lips and you're not trying to put it out. And you're not thinking about inhaling or exhaling necessarily, simply that there is a candle in front of your lips that you are trying to not put out. And how does that feel for you? As we are remembering that the tip of the tongue wants to be anchored to the back of the bottom front teeth, how might this feel for you? Wherever you are, whenever thou art, it is 6:01 a.m. on this November 9th, Tuesday, 2021. Here on Pagawan, that means it is a True Love Tuesday, like every Tuesday. I want to welcome you back wherever you are, whenever you are, whatever you are doing. Whether you are walking outside, you got us in the AirPods, or whether you're inside, you got us on the vinyl player. Whether you are getting through us to us telecommunicatively. Whatever you are doing out there, we hope that you are reminding one another that there's a candle in front of your lips that you're trying to not put out. Might we be having a more clear and direct time in our lives should we get out of our own scaredy cat ways by allowing our bodies to feel good even when it is scared, by pretending that there's a candle in front of our lips that we're trying to not put out. And it just flickers there. As the tip of the tongue wants to be anchored to the back of the bottom front teeth, and how might that feel for you? Indeed, again, there is a candle in front of your lips in which you're trying to not put out, and it's just flickering there. And how does that feel for you? Today we're talking about being more clear and direct. We're talking about being clear and direct, why it's important to be clear and direct. Might we get our bodies to feel clear and direct first? As we are all just trying to solve problems. We are each just trying to gain ahead in life and have our spirit feel so good in life for it. Might it be harder to get what we want and feel so great in life when we are less clear and direct, as we know that confusion and being vague and muddledness and uncertainty kills freedom like no other, which means it kills happiness like no other. And are we also considerate and loving already? Don't we naturally already consider and love for one another in our own ways? So doesn't our compassion to be loving and considerate sometimes stretch us too thin, as sometimes we anticipate too much of what we can do to be caring and compassionate, caring and loving, considerate towards other people? Might we stretch ourselves too thin sometimes by anticipating? Have we ever stretched ourselves so thin have we ever stretched ourselves so thin from anticipating what other people could want from us that we felt like we had nothing left for ourselves? And yet, can't we do so much to make others happy? And so can't being clear and direct to find out what we could do to be loving and considerate? Might that sometimes be the most loving thing to do, is be clear and direct, sometimes even though it might hurt? Even though it might hurt, sometimes might it be the best thing to be clear and direct? as how long it takes to get to being loving and considerate sometimes matters, as life is finite. What might stop us? Has it ever occurred that we feel like we are already clear and direct? Do we ever already feel clear and direct? Might we already know what we want to do all the time? Doesn't it sometimes feel like our bodies already know what they want to do, what our minds want to talk about, what we want to say? However, doesn't it feel sometimes that something is simply stopping you? What is that? A physical feeling, maybe? Might we be able to conquer this physical feeling in the face of fear in order to be clear and direct? Why? To be loving and considerate. As having confusion and being uncertain kills freedom like no other, and isn't freedom happiness? So wouldn't we want to be more loving and considerate? Wouldn't we want to be more clear and direct instead of vague and dodgy? As being vague and dodgy might increase uncertainty in what we have to be considerate for. And doesn't that limit our freedom to be loving and considerate, as now we are trying to anticipate many different games instead of just understanding what game to play? Aren't we best when we are playing games, humans? Aren't we best at playing games? Whether that be games for your financial needs, in order to juggle your life so that you can be a good worker, but also a good husband, or a good wife, or a good father, or a good mother, or a good son, or a good daughter, yet a good student still, and a good worker. Aren't we always playing games, even within the school and even within the work? Aren't there games within that? How fast you can work, how many orders you can make, how well you can make those orders, how coordinated you can feel when you're making those orders, how quickly you can address tickets. Sometimes even a game to see how much we can relax while we're responding to emails. How many games can we juggle at a time? Aren't we best when we play games? Even if those games sometimes are detrimental to our own well-being in the long run. Aren't we great at playing games, humans? And so don't we want to know the rules of the games in order so that we can play these games as well as we can? Such then, doesn't uncertainty again kill freedom the most? Is imagine being uncertain about the rules of the game. Can't even play the game. Now let's be less uncertain about how to play the games that we are playing by being clear and direct. As the games that we are playing are always being loving and considerate, whether it be to ourselves, whether it be to our friends and family, whether it be to a lover, whether it be to a brother or a sister or a cousin, or to ourselves again. Aren't the games that we're always playing? Aren't there games that we're always playing? And isn't the game always being loving and considerate, whether it be for other people or for yourself? Aren't we always playing a game of how much we can love ourselves and be considerate for ourselves while doing the same for others? You know that your potential is always maxed out when you know the rules of the game, so you can actually perform to the game. And we're always playing this game of being loving and considerate for ourselves and for other people, so how might we be the strongest in this game of being loving and considerate while maybe being clear and direct? As we know, uncertainty kills our ability to be free, which kills our ability to be happy, as we know that we want to be free to play these games of being loving and considerate, whether they be for ourselves or other people. We might be clear and direct by getting out of our own way to speak what we want to speak, and that might occur by allowing the muscles to relax or allowing the proper muscles to engage. For example, like when we pretend that there's a candle in front of our lips that we're trying to not put out, which might not always be the case for us. When we are speaking to someone who might make us feel like we want to be vague and uncertain, it might cause us to forget that the tip of our tongue wants to be anchored to the back of the bottom front teeth. We might be there, and it might cause us to forget that that we want to pretend that there's a candle in front of both of our lips that we're trying to not put out. We might remember that the back 1/3 of the tongue is vertical, up and down, up and down. There might be times in our lives that it is hard to remember those. And so it might be hard to remember the rules of your body, which means it might be hard to play the game in your body. It might be hard to access the most freedom in your body. Should we not remember the rules of our body? We might be around people, especially people who we are intimidated by, for whatever reason. We might be around intimidating people who might make us forget the rules of our body. Well, doesn't that limit us in our ability to be free and authentic in how we want to express ourselves, in our ability to be clear and direct in how we want to play, how we want to go through this game, how we know we want to, but we might be conquered by fear, or we might feel like we're held down by intimidation or some kind of physical feeling, an inability to act, inability to say what you want to say. Doesn't that limit our ability to be free in our own body? Doesn't that limit our ability to be happy? Can't we be happier in playing our game, to be loving and considerate by getting out of our own way, like pretending that there is a candle in front of everyone's lips that we are each trying to not put out? As we remember that the tips of our tongues want to be anchored to the back of the bottom front teeth, and how might that feel for us? Does it feel easier to feel more clear and direct? How does our imagination feel? What is our sense of self like as we are trying to not put out this candle tonight? We're not thinking about exhaling, and we're not thinking about inhaling, simply being guided that there's a candle in front of your lips that you're trying to not put out. And that the tip of your tongue wants to be anchored to the back of the bottom front teeth. And how might that feel for you? As we are speaking with our coworker, as we are diving underwater and looking at the amazing turtles, as we are in the galaxy staring at the stars in our spaceman suit, as you are walking on the street looking at one another. Do we feel that we have a different relationship with our ability to be authentic, clear, and direct with ourselves, and thus the world, by remembering that there's a candle just flickering in front of your lips that you're trying to not put out? It appears to me that our bodies always know what they want to do, that our minds always know that they want to do. There's always something it wants to do. There's always something, there's never a shortage of you wanting to do something. You want to do all the things, go left, right, up, down, fly, go underwater, see all the views. You want to do all the things. There's no question that there will be something for the human body to want to do. However, how do we be clear and direct about what we want to do? Is it possible that we can get out of our own way and observe what it is that we want to do? Might we expel all this energy on simply getting out of our own way, as our bodies and minds always want to do and know that they want to do? Might we just have a reliable way to get out of our own way and sit in our most comfortable chair and allow our body to be its authentic, clear, and direct self, so that we can just deal with whatever is happening and not deal with having to deal with the uncertainty of what might be happening? Free to run the gambit of the entire human spectrum, would it not be the most free thing to simply get out of our own way to allow our body to be clear and direct? How? By being clear and direct with the rules of how our body wants to have a relationship with itself, how it wants to breathe. By remembering that there's a candle in front of our lips that we're trying to not put out, and that the tips of our tongue want to be anchored to the back of the bottom front teeth. Following the rules of our body, might we be able to observe what our body wants to do, what our mind wants to do, clearly and directly, especially without the fear of being unable to handle, as we know that there's a candle. We'll be right back after this short break. The last portion of today's True Love Tuesday. It is November 9, 2021. We'll be right back after this short break. But only if you remember that there's a candle in front of your lips that you're trying to knock it out. lips that we're trying to not put out. You movers, you crazy movers, you. Welcome back to the last quarter of the show here on True Love Tuesday here on Palgo One. It is 6:18 a.m. Welcome back. How are you? How is life wherever you are? Are we feeling clear and direct with our relationship with our body? Are we able to feel that there's a candle in front of our lips that we're trying to not put out, or is it difficult? Does our body find resistance? Or does it feel familiar and warm? How does it feel for you? Does it feel like a friendly handshake, or does it feel like a far and away wave? Does it feel like something that's fleeting? Does it feel like something like unreliable and scary to pretend that there's a candle in front of the lips that you're trying to not put out? Wherever you are, as we're stretching our self-awareness, looking at our hands, looking down at our legs, remembering that we do not sit on our legs, remembering that there's a candle in front of every person's lips in which they're trying to not put out, whether that be someone you love or whether it be someone you are not so friendly with. There's a candle in front of everyone's lips that they're trying to not put out. And the tips of all of our tongues want to be anchored to the back of the bottom front teeth. And how far forward of the body does that feel for you? Doesn't it sometimes feel like being indirect is largely due to us being unable to just conquer our fears? Doesn't it feel as though largely the reason we are not clear and not direct, which leads to confusion and uncertainty in our lives, which leads to lack of freedom, which leads to no happiness? Isn't it true that oftentimes it seems that our inability to be clear and direct stems from our inability to handle our fear? Fear of being laughed at, fear of rejection, fear of acceptance. Doesn't it seem that most of the times in our lives, our inability to be clear and direct, which leads us into all this kinds of hell, doesn't oftentimes come from our feelings that we cannot handle the circumstances, handle what comes after, the consequences? If we are remembering that there is a candle in front of every person's lips, especially the person who is instilling fear in you, or you are allowing yourself to be afraid of, if we are pretending that there's a candle in front of our lips and that person's lips that we're trying to not put out, how might that feel for you today? Might it feel a little bit less scary to be clear and direct? Should we remember that the tips of our tongues want to be anchored to the back of the bottom front teeth? And as we grow our relationship with remembering that, with remembering that we have an ability to clear that nasty feeling of heartbreak, that nasty feeling of rejection in our body, as we grow our relationship with our ability to overcome that and overcome that fear, how does it feel to be clear and direct? As you're looking at your hands, or you're looking at the food around you, or perhaps you're looking at one another, perhaps you're looking out at the sea. Perhaps there are people behind you in which you are just imagining that there's a candle in front of their lips that they're trying to not put out. You might even not even have to look at them. How integrated do we feel with one another should we pretend that there's a candle in front of every person's lips in which they're trying to not put out? And so how hard might it feel to be clear and direct if we feel that we are integrated with one another? If we feel that we are responsible for one another's happiness, but also responsible for one another's independence, if we are watching ourselves, if we are all alike, like pretending that there's a candle in front of our lips, if we are all alike in having a relationship with our ability to do so, how does that affect our ability to be clear and direct when we are all alike? We're all just dealing with our inability to overcome fear. And it's just so hard. The tips of the tongue wants to be anchored to the back of the bottom front teeth, but sometimes it's just so hard to remember that, and sometimes it just makes it so hard to be clear and direct because now we're focused on breathing well. How do I breathe well if I didn't remember, if I had no clue that the tip of the tongue had anywhere where it wanted to be in order to allow the best breathing? How hard is it to be clear and direct when we don't even remember how to breathe well and we are beginning to breathe unwell around the person making us feel clear or unclear and undirect? How hard is it, right? How hard is it to be clear and direct when it feels like your ability to breathe is snatched away from the person who you need to be clear and direct with? When it feels as though your ability to breathe well is snatched away by you encountering this person? Well, how hard is it, right? To be clear and direct when you feel like your priority now must shift to breathing consciously because you don't know how to breathe. It's like your breathing suddenly went to bad mode and you don't know how to get out of it. Life or death mode and you don't know how to get out of it. Isn't it much harder to be clear and direct when your attention is split like that? Well, might we ease and soothe our minds whenever it is split like that a little bit more by allowing ourselves to remember that there is a place that the tongue wants to rest, despite when you are stressed or when you are relaxed. There is always a place that your tongue wants to rest, and it is the same for both when you are relaxed or stressed. Doesn't that give you a concrete ground to be more clear and direct? In those moments in which we feel that power is snatched away from us, perhaps we could regain that power by aligning more closer to our truths, by knowing more about our truths, by remembering that the tip of the tongue wants to be anchored to the back of the bottom front teeth, by remembering that there's a candle in front of your lips that you're trying to not put out. Again, by growing this relationship with our body, by growing a relationship with ourselves and knowing how to flush out those nasty feelings of rejection or heartbreak or disappointment in ourselves, or fear of a future that might be coming in our head, might we grow a strong relationship with ourselves, with our ability to overcome those feelings? Wouldn't it be easier to be clear and direct as we feel that we're less focused or have our attention less divided on feeling better, as we'll have that down pat? You'll feel better and be more direct, because when you feel good, you think good, and when you think good, you do good. When you feel good, you think good, and when you think good, you do good. And to be clear and direct, don't we need to feel good? Don't we need to do good? Isn't being clear and direct doing good as it gets us closer to being loving and considerate faster, as we are all these loving and considerate beings by nature, simply looking for more ways to be loving and considerate within our own convenience? Might it be easier to be more loving and considerate with one another when we are more clear and direct about each other's needs and confusions, so we can clear those confusions and uncertainty, and so we spread ourselves less thin when we are trying to be loving and considerate as we always are? Spend more time being loving and considerate and less time wondering how to be loving and considerate. Thank you for joining us here on Pao Go On with our invisible shirt here. Thank you for joining us. It is November 9, 2021, 6:27 a.m. Tuesday, which means it is another True Love Tuesday, discussing how we can love one another better. Here on Pao Go On. What is love if not the truth without hatred? Thank you for joining us today. Thank you. Thank you, thank you. We hope that you have gotten so much. We hope that you've gotten something out of this today. We hope that you have had some time to pretend that there's a candle in front of your lips that you're trying to not put out. Feeling so good. Here, remember, at the beginning, middle, and the end of the show, we will get to any announcements, we will get to any chats, comments, donations, ninja guineas, or anything like that. Thank you guys for coming from, whether you're from Twitter, Instagram, Discord, or TikTok, or word of mouth, or telecommunication. Thank you so much for coming through. We appreciate you. We hope that you have felt the front of your shins, remembering that the weight-bearing portion of the spine is the front. We have so much more to get to this year. So fortunately, we have got the rest of the week. It just seems to have lined up. The rest of this week, we will be here at the normal time slot. This employment thing has happened. Dun-dun-dun. This employment thing has happened. But the consequence is that Pal-Go-On will be moving time slots. We don't know where yet. It might be more times a week. It might be less times a week. It might be in the mornings. It might be in the afternoons. It might be in the evenings. But Pal-Go-On will be experiencing a large shift soon. And in order to handle this large shift soon, we will be having a hiatus. We'll be having a hiatus, an official hiatus, as Herbie do be going on hiatuses, but this is an official hiatus. A Pal-Go-On beginning November 15th. And we will be joining us back on November 22nd. Again, we'll be going on hiatus from November 15th, that is Monday, to November 22nd, the following Monday. We'll be having a week-long hiatus to sort ourselves out. We'll be on Twitter. We will be possibly on Discord. There will be a lot of shifts happening. It will be interesting. I'm interested in seeing where it goes. The theme is being worked on and everything like that. Yeah, it'll be interesting where it goes. There possibly may be some changes to even the channel itself, as we haven't been on Twitch in a while, just on YouTube, but that might be changing. We might be multi-streaming again, but different times, and possibly different. There might be changes, some big changes, some big changes, but all for the better, all to integrate the best, all to life love the best, get the good message out there, and all to fear death the least. Thank you guys for joining up until now. We will be here at our 5:30 slot until Friday. So that is a Warfare Wednesday, a Truth Hurts Thursday, a Truth Hurts Day on 11th, and then a Freedom Fridays on the 12th. Large shifts going on. We've talked a lot about this, basically a religion, this religious relationship with ourselves on Pal-Go-On. And perhaps we will be seeing more of what's to come from its applications as we are discovering together the power of the candle in front of our lips that we're trying to not put out. We hope for big things, but we enjoy all the little and smallest things. So thank you so much for every little bit of support. Big shout out to Felipe Mullen. Big shout out to Nika-san. Big shout out to Eric Taylor Main. Big shout out to my brother, my cousin. Anybody who's been giving support or curiosity for the show. Big shout out to other streamers, Secret, Void Walker 88, Bill Secchi. Big shout out to Hippie Love Turbo. Big shout out to Latchland. Big shout out to Jelly Duck. Big shout out to Ben. Big shout out to Flashback. Everybody. Zany Hector. Half Pound. Toast. Everybody. Big shout out to all of the support that has been We will be sharing more news as this week closes out. What a crazy time, right? Feeling so good. From the inside out, better than your morning would. Feel without stretching our self-awareness like a muscle. I'm feeling so good for it using these body magic tricks. My name is Herbie. Good morning, everyone. And this has been absolutely tag on. Thank you guys.